What's going on YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Lupinranger vs. Patoranger episode 11. This episode is called I Will Continue Shooting, and this episode overall was pretty decent. It wasn't one that necessarily had huge story, but what it did have that was cool was that it did introduce a new Lupin Kaiser combination that I mentioned the previous episode was going to be introduced this episode, so that was cool to see. It also had a very interesting concept regarding some of the Patorangers, and something that happened with them was fairly different. Something that we've had things like it, but we haven't had this specific version of it, so keep that in mind. And also the Lupin collection item for this episode was another one that is definitely recognizable. If you see it and you know Sentai, you know exactly what the Lupin collection item is supposed to be representing in this case, even though in this case they really didn't do anything to change up the appearance of it. They basically just took the same thing and maybe removed like the logos and stuff that were on the original item. But other than that, it's basically the exact same item that was in the show that it was from. So we'll get into that in this episode. What does end up happening at the very start is that apparently the Power Rangers are going to be having a kind of film made for them for PR purposes, and by that it means to kind of promote them and make them gain more recognition and popularity among the area, because the thing is that the Lupin Rangers are always in the news, they're always recognized, they're always being talked about and loved, but no one's really talking about the Power Rangers because of the fact that the Power Rangers aren't as interesting, aren't doing as much, and just aren't getting the same recognition. And that's something that we've been seeing throughout the show so far, is that the Power Rangers are typically seen less and aren't as given, like they aren't given as much love. So what does end up happening is that they're doing this shoot or whatever, and things are going okay, though not perfect, when suddenly the director mentions, this shoot needs some sort of sex appeal or whatever. And so what ends up happening is that suddenly Sequoia ends up suddenly transforming his appearance. And this isn't by choice, this is because a gangler is manipulating his body, and what he ends up doing is that the gangler ends up manipulating his body so that he has the appearance of being a woman. So he has like a wig, he has his chest kind of puffed up as though he has breasts, and then he even cup checks himself just to see if there's any down there, and he's missing that, and he has that, and there's several moments of these kind of like, why would we have to do this kind of episode, but like it's like goofy. I don't know what I would call it, I don't want to say anything because like it's just a weird kind of situation. And the thing is that they've done like body swap episodes before where like, say, one of the Rangers swaps with one of the other Rangers. That has happened. But as far as like changing of genders, that's not a really common thing. Especially to the extent that they really push for it in this episode, which isn't a bad thing. It's a goofy kind of concept, which honestly is an unneeded concept, but I'm not going to go nuts over it. So anyway, what does end up happening is that Sequoia, as we said before, does get transformed. They do end up trying to run the scene again with Sequoia in this new form, and what does end up happening is the Lupin Rangers end up heading off to go and find the gangler that's in the same location that the shoot is occurring, and they end up watching over the scene that's happening with Sequoia acting like a girl and everything like that, and suddenly what does end up happening is that the Lupin Rangers are caught laughing, so that leads to the Power Rangers and the Lupin Rangers fighting each other, and we end up seeing the transformation occur. And when that happens, Patoranger ends up having a different costume. So rather than having the standard costume without the skirt for the guys, and obviously normally he would have no breasts shown or whatever. In this case, he has breast, and he also has a skirt. In this case, the skirt's the main difference, obviously. That's something that's very common. Girls typically have the skirts, guys typically have just the regular shirts and pants. So that's a very interesting thing to see, of course, that, yes, he has a skirt. And what does end up happening is that the gangler does appear, and the gangler is called Pitchcock, which, if you're wondering what that actually is supposed to be referencing, which I haven't seen anyone talk about it, which may just be because no one's thinking about it, The reason why it's called Pitchcock is because it's supposed to be referencing Hitchcock. If you remember Hitchcock, the movie director, the one that's he's very, very well known. He's known for making several extremely well recognized movies. So he's basically a play off of that. Like, his name comes from that general concept. No one's talking about it, but that is pretty much what I would assume that they were pretty much playing off of. What's a famous movie director that they could use, or a producer, or whoever? Let's use that name and let's create our own version of it. So what we do see is that this monster has a pretty like silly ability. I mean, he's not like that strong. He's probably one of the weaker monsters for the season, because he has this ability that allows him to transform their appearance, and he also has the ability to make them slip and slide. And like, that's not a big deal. And like, just in general, he's like, changing gender and changing and making it so that people slip isn't that scary. Like, he's not menacing, he's not that exciting, he doesn't do much. So it's sort of like he's one of the most underwhelming monsters for the season. Does it mean that he's a bad monster? No. It just means that he's definitely not one of the ones that you would go out of your way to say, oh yeah, like he's that really powerful monster. No, he's not that powerful. he's definitely not that powerful. So what we do end up seeing is that in the meantime, eventually the other Patorangers are eventually transformed as well into their corresponding reverse genders. So, Kichiro ends up transforming into a girl, and Tsukasa ends up transforming into a guy. So they end up trying to do the shoot again, and things do not go very well at all. And what does end up happening is that there's also this general suspicion of the director possibly being being Pitchcock. Now, what does end up happening is that at the same time we end up learning why Sequoia is so determined to do these shoots and also be involved in it, and it has to do with the fact that when he was a cadet, he dreamed of being part of the police unit for so long, of the tactical unit, and the thing was that he envied Kichiro and Tsukasa all the way through his candidacy, and when he felt like he had to give up, whenever he felt like he was going to give up, he thought back to what they said to him about, the tears of frustration are necessary in order to reach your goals, and, it's important to continue to pursue those goals because, that will make you stronger as a person and all that other stuff. So basically, he has these memories and these ideas of them being something that he couldn't be, that he fought to be, and he was always considered like the lesser class of these cadets. Like, he was never normally considered to be that strong. He was actually considered to be one of the weaker cadets, but he continued and he persevered to the point that he was able to join this tactical unit and work with the two people that he envied so greatly. So it's a very important thing. I actually like that a lot. It would have been nice if we had a little bit more story to it other than what we got, but I do appreciate the fact that we do have some story and context for Sequoia, just because of the fact that, anytime we can get more story for the Power Rangers is really good, because the Lupinrangers do get a ton of attention, and we don't get as much attention for the Power Rangers often enough, at least so far, and that's probably what's going to happen a lot of times. It's going to be primarily Lupinrangers, but with these with these episodes here and there where there's like some good focus towards the Power Rangers, because again, the story really is about the Lupinrangers. Sure, the Power Rangers are super important, and they're definitely going to be, super key to the overall story, but at the same time, you have to consider the fact that the ones that are the true story characters are the Lupinrangers. The Power Rangers are still very important. It's just that, who is the story really focused on here? It's really the Lupinrangers, and, of course, you could say maybe later on they'll change that. It's true, they could, but I don't expect it. I expect that, generally speaking, Lupinrangers will definitely take a lot of the priority and focus, but the Power Rangers will still always have some focus, even if it's not the main focus overall. So keep that in mind if you're wondering, do I think that it's going to change at all? I do, but I don't think it's going to become something where, they're going to gain, ultimate overall focus to the extent that the Lupinrangers get, so much attention. Keep that in mind. So what we do end up seeing is that eventually they're, on pursuit of Pitchcock. Eventually what does end up happening is that when they're performing that scene, we end up seeing that the pretend ganglers appear, and the ganglers, by the way, that are fake, the ones that they actually use with like the hats and everything, I'm pretty sure what they basically did was they took the crow costumes, like the basic crow foot soldiers from TheKingNappy, and then they just repainted them all black, just because right when I saw them at first I was like, wait, those are crows, and if you're wondering how it's spelled, it's QROW, not crow as in CROW, crows. So that's very interesting to note that, because I'm pretty sure when I looked at it that those hats and like the general design resembled that. And what does end up happening is that eventually this guy is removed and we end up seeing the real Portamen appear. And at that point, what ends up happening is the Portamen end up fighting the Patorangers. So then at that point, they have to transform and try to fight back. Following this, Lupinrangers do end up joining as well, and what we do end up seeing is that there's fighting that occurs between all of them, and eventually they're thinking of actually targeting the director, when in reality the one that actually is Pitchcock is actually the producer, the one that's been filming it and making sure that things get paid for and done with and all that kind of stuff. And you see, the only one that knew that was Sequoia, because he says something that is kind of weird just because of like his current state of being and the fact that he's like a woman and all that, where he says like it's a woman's intuition, which is just like, oh my god, I don't even know what to say to that right now. But it's just very, the word choices in this episode are just like, okay, I don't even know what to say. So yeah, keep that in mind. Definitely a different kind of episode. Just the ideas here were a little bit like, I don't even know what to, like, they make you feel uncomfortable. That's what that's probably the best thing I could say. There's definitely a level of discomfort that comes from this episode, just from the ideas and the things that are done in this episode, like the constant like fondling here and checking down there. It's like, yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. Definitely a different kind of episode. I was hoping they wouldn't go so personal in a way, but I mean, I get it. Still, what we do end up, there's even a point where when they're fighting the Portamen, that like Sequoia ends up grabbing one of the Portamen and ends up putting it close to his chest. And remember, he's like a girl during that time, and like the head goes in. Yeah, it's just no. I don't even want to go there anymore. But yeah, this episode definitely goes for some more risque moves, I guess you could say. I don't know if that's right, but about right. You get my point though. So what we do end up seeing is that eventually when Pitchcock is revealed and everything, the Patorangers do end up trying to fight, but what ends up happening is that they keep on slipping. So then the Lupinrangers end up using their grappling hook attacks to kind of jump around, use their versus changers to blast away at the enemy, and eventually they jump in to unlock his safe and get out the Lupin collection item, which resembles the the Go Rotor GT from Vexento. Basically, it's the exact same design as what it was in Vexento. The only differences are the fact that there's no like Vexento text on it. Like if you remember the actual original Go Rotor, there was actually text on the actual wheel. There is no text on that, so that's very important. But other than that, it's the same thing. Like typically the Lupin collection items have had some sort of recoloring. This is one of those ones where they didn't recolor it at all, although I'm sure they could have done something with the tires. I don't know why they didn't, but who knows? I'm not going to complain either way. I mean, it makes it simpler for me to recognize what it is. So that's a very interesting thing to consider. So they do end up getting the Lupin collection item. Eventually, as the monster is destroyed, Gochi does end up getting summoned to gigantify Pitchcock. At that point, Pitchcock does grow big. Good Striker arrives, and at that point, the Lupinrangers. Actually, what ends up happening is that the Patoranger do the finisher with the police boost from the biker trigger machine, and then the Lupinrangers end up using Good Striker to form Lupin Kaiser, but they actually end up using Lupinranger, and then they switched to Lupinranger Knight, which means that they use the scissor and blade dial fighter combination. But what ends up happening is that, as we know, Pitchcock has the ability to change something's gender. So in this case, it actually changes the blade's gender from a sword to a hammer, which is a weird thing. I don't know why a hammer would be that, would be the alternative to a sword, but who knows. What does end up happening is that from here, the Lupinrangers end up wielding it and having the form of Lupinranger Knight hammer. And keep this in mind, in this episode we do actually hear them say Lupinranger Knight, so it isn't just something that I said previous episode. Like, it is confirmed, and also I've heard it already that, like, yes, that's the name of it. If you're wondering what the blade and scissors combination is, that is what it's called. But with the hammer, it's Knight hammer. So that's very cool to remember. That is the new combination that we do end up seeing, which I am very happy to see. It's a limited edition item, keep it in mind. So if you're wondering about the hammer dial fighter, can you get that? You can get it if you buy it online. Just keep in mind that it's not going to be one that's going to have a massive quantity. It's supposed to be one that's for a limited time only, and that likely means that in the show they're not going to be using it more often than maybe this episode alone. It may not ever appear again. So keep that in mind, that it's not going to be a weapon that will be used all that often, but it's definitely something that's cool to see, even if it's just used once. So keep that in mind. Following this, when they do end up defeating Pitchcock, what does end up happening is that the Patorangers have to continue to do their shoot. We do end up seeing that the Patorangers end up, after doing their shoot, watching in their base what they actually managed to make, and they're joking around, and everyone is just kind of having a silly time about what they did, and that's pretty much what we see. Now, as far as things go with the next episode, we do end up seeing that there is going to be some kid that's going to actually find the Lupin Collection item, which, if you're wondering what the Lupin Collection item is, because I immediately recognized it, it basically is the Chrono Changer from Time Ranger, which the Chrono Changer, for those that don't know, Time Ranger, Chrono Changer is actually the Chronomorpher from Power Rangers Time Force, except in this case it has a recoloring on it. So it's kind of interesting that, first of all, they're using a morpher, and also it's a recoloring, which is a very different recoloring than I would ever expect them to do with it, but I'm not going to complain either way. It's also one of the ones that I don't remember them actually having in the original images at all for the Lupin Collection items, which I actually appreciate that. Like, the Lupin Collection items are really cool just to see, because a lot of times you get these kind of items that are oddball items from different seasons, and sometimes they're something from the mecha, sometimes they're a change, or sometimes there's something like a weapon. It's hard to really tell, but I always like the fact that there's a level of variety to what you get each episode when it comes to these Lupin Collection items, because it's always referencing a season. So that's really cool to see, and I love the fact that I immediately recognize this one, so that's very, very cool to consider. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I love to know your opinions about this episode, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.